Okay, it's time for another unboxing video with John's record collection. This is box number 2 with everything from the Apple Pie Motherhood Band to Reverend Belgium Baxter. Let's see what's in here. So first band that we have in the box is the Apple Pie Motherhood Band. I believe, oh yes, they are a band from Boston. So they were associated with the Bosstown Sound. The Bosstown Sound was actually a bit of a musical fiasco. It happened in about 1968. What happened is that the record companies, major label record companies, realized that there were all of these bands coming out of San Francisco. And so they decided to create another city-based music scene, but basically they tried to create it out of thin air rather than out of any sort of organically created musical scene out of a big city. And so, hence, they tried to create a music scene out of Boston that was called the Bosstown Sound. And unfortunately, a lot of these records got a bad critical reputation, and so a lot of them ended up selling poorly. But in retrospect, after some of the hype and the backlash has faded, some of these Boston bands, Boston psychedelic bands, are actually reasonably good. And I think I seem to remember Apple Pie Motherhood Band is one of them, although there's some other Boston bands I like more. And here, Appleton Symphonic Menagerie. It's by the electronic. So Appleton Symphonic Menagerie is basically, it's like one of those group names that's really just a front for one guy. In this case, the guy is an electronic composer named John Appleton. And what's interesting about this is he did a lot of experimentation with tape loops and samples. He would tape off television, and that was done in like 1968, 1969, 1970. So it was the time when not a lot of people were doing that. It has a lot of weird titles like Newark Airport Rock, Second Scene Unobserved, things like that. And it's on a jazz label called the Flying Dutchman label. So it's a very unusual early electronic record that was put out on the jazz label. And we got here. Oh, the Aquarians. The name of the record is Jungle Grass. Hint. But this is a more Latin psychedelic record. So if that's your thing, I like the blend of Latin music and psychedelic music, so it appeals to me. So if you like that sort of thing, it's the sort of thing you will like. And this one is a bit more novelty oriented. It's in the celebrity golden throats subgenre. It's a recording of Archie and Edith from All in the Family. And I think one reason I got it is, yes, it has a version of the Beatles song When I'm 64. I have to collect all those crazy, weird Beatles covers, so I have this in my collection. And here's a really good band that if you are not familiar with, you should know. It is an instrumental group named Davy Allen and the Arrows. And I have a couple of albums by these guys because they're great. Basically, it's a lot of fuzz tone guitar. They did a lot of soundtracks to 1960s exploitation movies and biker movies. So if you like that 1960s fuzz tone instrumental sound, this is definitely right up your alley. These guys are great. This is one of the Davey Allen and the Arrows records I have. And oh, here's another one. This record is it has an even killer cover, more killer cover, psychedelic sounds. So definitely the combination of motorcycles and motorcycle movies and psychedelic was hyped by this group, and it's a really let me see what's on here. But anyway, it's I love Davey Allen and the Arrows. They did a lot of great soundtracks. So if you can find them, definitely check them out. And this is a band called Ars Nova. If you're into Baroque pop, this is one that you might like. If you're looking for relatively cheap psychedelic records, this is something that you might want to check out. And here's another psychedelic record on the mainstream label, The Art of Lovin', Lovin apostrophe. They didn't. They were too busy loving to add an extra G on the end of it. And let's see. Oh, okay. This is very unusual. So I got into this. So this is I collect a lot of very weird subgenres and subgenres. So this is bird music. It's basically recordings of actual birds. There are a lot of actually very interesting records where a great deal of the music is supplied by recording actual birds. And so this one is called The Songs of Canaries with music by the Artal Orchestra. It was actually a guy named Mickey McGowan, record dealer out in the San Francisco Bay Area, who got me into this. I will probably talk about Mickey a great deal more because he was a very big influence on me. And Mickey, you can find out about Mickey if you get Incredibly Strange Music Volume 1. He was actually the first person interviewed for that volume. He is definitely an OG record collector and dealer, and great guy. And let's see. Oh yeah, this one. I had to do some trade deals back in the day to get this one. This is a very rare one. It is the U.S. Roulette label version of Arzachel. It is psychedelic prog rock, oh yeah, all the people on the record are they used fake names on the record, but I think there's some people associated with some progressive rock acts like Dong and Yes associated with it, but I'd probably have to look it up to figure out who these guys really are. But definitely a very influential record, and there was even an industrial group, Nurse with Wound, who included this album on their list of influences. And oh my goodness. Yes. Dorothy Ashby. She is the greatest. She's the greatest at what she does. Well, the late Dorothy Ashby. I believe she's no longer with us. But Dorothy Ashby is a jazz harpist. So pretty much anytime you hear a harp, if you hear a harp sampled on a hip-hop record, it's almost certainly the work of Dorothy Ashby. So this is just absolutely great stuff. Very hard to find. The stuff she did on Cadet was a kind of soul
blues label that decided to go a little psychedelic soul in the late 60s. And Dorothy Ashby was one of their artists. And so her records on Cadet are very hard to find and they're very expensive because psychedelic collectors want them and DJs and people looking for beats want them too. So that tends to drive up the price. However, Dorothy Ashby did release other records on other labels. Here's an earlier record she did on Prestige, which is more of a straight jazz label, but it is definitely, if you can find pretty much anything that she released on any label. I think she released some stuff on Prestige. There's another jazz label called Argo that she did some releases on, but anything you can find by her, great stuff. This is the Ashes on Vault. This is a psychedelic record. The group, I believe, was related to another group called the Peanut Butter Conspiracy. And let's see. Oh, goodness. Yeah. Robert Ashley, electronic avant-garde musician. He's on the same Nurse with Wound lists of influences. So definitely, if you're looking for something weird, first Google Nurse with Wound list. That is where you can find some names from really bizarre sounding groups. If you want to start dabbling into German progressive rock and contemporary classical music and all sorts of weird stuff, the Nurse with Wound list is definitely one of the first places you can go. Here's a very good one. This is an English pressing. So there's a record label I happen to like very much called ESP Disc. ESP Disc was a very forward-thinking record label that would basically sign almost anybody if they were really crazy and innovative. It existed in the 1960s. And it was called ESP Disc because the founder of the label, a guy named Bernard Stolman, was obsessed with the invented language of Esperanto. So Esperanto begins ESP, so that's why he called the label ESP Disc. But anyway, ESP Disc, if you can find any original pressings on that label, just go get it because that stuff is crazy. They put the Fugs. You'll see I have some Fugs records in my collection. But this guy, Ed Askew, let me talk about this guy. So Ed Askew, very weird voice. He almost sounds a little bit like Elmer Fudd on the record. That may be his only voice. It may be a persona, and maybe his real voice. I don't know. But he plays this instrument called the tipple, which is a lot like a dulcimer. And it has this just beautiful crystalline sound. So this is kind of an avant folk record or freak folk record. So if that's up your alley, definitely, it's probably really hard to find an original these days, but if you can find a reissue of it, definitely check it out. And Assegai, this is not an original. I think the original is on Vertigo, that UK progressive rock label. Pretty much everything on Vertigo is ridiculously expensive these days. But anyway, Assegai is one of the first Afrobeat rock groups that became popular around 1969, 1970. I shouldn't say too popular. They didn't really sell that many records, but in influence and in terms of the hip people buying the records, they definitely had some street cred in that regard. One of the reasons I have this record is that they do a version of Hey Jude, and it's in the African language of Yoruba. So I like to collect Beatles covers, and one of my goals is to collect Beatles covers in as many different languages as possible, and I think I have at least 30 or so different languages that Beatles covers are in. But anyway, this is Yoruba, the Beatles in Yoruba, but a lot of other great Afrobeat, Afro rock on this record too. This one actually, I don't think I paid this too much for it. It's Top Hits of Today, Associated Soul Group. It's what I call a psychsploitation record. It's a budget label record that tried to cash in on the psychedelic phenomenon. But it was probably done by studio musicians, hence it's called exploito-psych or psychsploitation. I love it for the boots, and there's a track on here which has a really good beat, really good drum break on it for you hip hop heads. But I just happen to like it. I don't think it's worth too much money, but I really like it. And this guy, I may have just gotten this for the cover. I don't even remember what this sounds like, but this is a private press record called Attila. Look at this dude. Look at how crazy looking this dude is. I mean, this dude is absolutely crazy, insane. He's got like a mohawk split down the middle, and he's wearing a Virgin Mary t-shirt. Is he wearing a dress? Is that a dress or a kilt? The guy's insane. It's absolutely insane. I don't know what the hell he's doing. Anyway, this is good. So this is one of these private press lounge records I collect. Kind of has a psychedelic feel to it. I also collected it because it has a cover version of the Beatles' Let It Be. One thing I found nice about it is I'm trying to remember if it was live. I think it was recorded live, like a lot of lounge records are. And there's even a little bit about how there's a guy who's about to be sent off to Vietnam. And they're playing music for him just before he gets sent out to fight the war in the jungles of Vietnam. So definitely a time capsule piece here. Here's a soundtrack LP from the 1980s documentary Atomic Cafe. If you've ever had a chance to see the documentary Atomic Cafe, it's really interesting. It's a lot of campy newsreels from the 1950s about nuclear war and how people would duck and cover under their desks to not get killed in the nuclear war. What's interesting about this compilation soundtrack for Atomic Cafe is it has a lot of songs from the 40s and 50s about the theme of atomic energy and atomic bombs. And so, for example, there were gospel songs that had titles like "When Jesus Hits Like an Atomic Bomb." If you've ever heard that song, it's really good. It's really good. So if you want to listen to some gospel with some weird themes, there's definitely some atomic bomb themed gospel that came out in the 40s and 50s that you might want to do some research into. Okay. Oh yes. A lot of Billy Joel fans hate this. They absolutely hate this record. I tend to think it's the best thing that Billy Joel has ever done. It makes up for all the other music he's made. And so Attila is a group. It's two guys. So it's kind of a power duo, like the Black Keys, except it's one guy on drums and Billy Joel on really hard, loud electronic keyboards trying to play like he's the guy in Deep Purple. And I think it's amazing because I like the hard psychedelic stuff. especially like the drum and piano, electric piano sound is quite unique. And I just love this cover. Look at them. They're in armor, fur-lined armor, in some like did they do this album cover shoot in like a meat truck or something? There's like slabs of beef hanging from meat hooks. And they're just like in fur-lined armor surrounded by slabs of beef hanging from the ceiling. I mean, it's just so incongruous. I love this cover. This cover is to die for. What do I have here? Oh, yes, another one of my spoken word sound effects records. This is Auscultation of the Heart. I basically did it, this one by title. I alphabetized this one by title because I probably couldn't remember who actually did the record if you held a gun to my head. So some records, if it's hard to find out who was the guy that did it, I'll just alphabetize by title. Most of them I alphabetize by artist. But this is a spoken word record. Auscultation of the Heart mainly has sounds of people's hearts on it. And it was used to teach, I guess, med students about like what do healthy sounding hearts versus non-healthy sounding hearts look like. Ooh, yes. So here's two records by Charles Austin and Joe Gallivan. A lot of this is like circa 1970 jazz. A lot of saxophone and Moog synthesizer, and some people refer to this genre as spiritual jazz. So it's jazz that was heavily influenced by the example of John Coltrane, but also influenced a lot by the black nationalism that was going on at the time. A lot of the black arts movement. So if you can find anything that even looks remotely like spiritual jazz, some of that stuff can be pretty pricey, but some of this stuff does turn up in the wild. These I actually had to get off eBay, so I technically wasn't lucky enough to find them just through garage sales or whatnot, but they're both very good stuff. I was just probably lucky to get it when the prices were lower. And oh yes, I don't know if I can really. I mean, I have to have this because it's a record of songs about the Beatles, but I probably wouldn't necessarily vouch for its musical quality. It's the average disco band. Seriously, are you going to lower expectations for yourself that much? The average disco band, music of the Beatles, goes disco. And let's see. Oh, This Is Us. Okay, so if you are one of the Exotica fans who might be listening to this, this is what you've been waiting for. Ethel Azama, Exotic Dreams. So this is like the Lita Anest record, like Ima Sumac, basically a lot of very, very otherworldly sounding female vocalists from the 1950s and early 60s. This one's called Exotic Dreams. It's on Liberty, which is the same label as all those great Martin Denny records. In fact, the woman, there's a woman in the background who is wearing a dark black wig, and she's behind this sculpture. That is Sandy Warner, who is the same woman who is the cover model for almost all of the early Martin Denny records, but it's the same woman. And so Azama, that's the end of the letter A's. So let's see my first record with the letter B. I have a record by Milton Babbitt. This is a 20th century classical music. Milton Babbitt had a composition called Philomel. It's taken from Greek mythology. And Philomel for soprano, recorded soprano, and synthesized sound. So this one uses a lot of, tape loops or tape loops run through a synthesizer of a woman's voice. It's actually kind of the, I don't want to say otherworldly because they already use that word, but maybe ethereal, very interesting for its time. Still a major influence in a lot of contemporary composers today. And here's some like weirdo 60s occult stuff from my collection. This is Babetta, The Art of Witchcraft, mostly a spoken word record with sections like the beginnings of magical knowledge, prophetic dream spell, love spell, conjuration of the spirit, and protection from curses and black magic. So I guess if I am worried about curses and black magic, I can just put on this record and I guess it'll protect me from black magic. Baby Road. Baby Road. It's a cover parody of the Beatles' Abbey Road. It's a bunch of babies in diapers on that little sidewalk there. All of the songs are cover versions of Beatles songs, but the concept is that they're done in the style of lullabies for babies. So hilarious concept, and I love having it. Badfinger. This is Badfinger Straight Up. It's a really good. Badfinger had a lot of hits in the 70s. This is a good power pop record. If you're into that sort of thing. The prices on this used to be a lot more, but I think they came down. So definitely a good one to pick up. And let's see. Oh, yes. Ina Baga and the Happy Hammond. So this is a lady playing a Hammond, almost like sounding like a church organ, playing a bunch of Beatles songs, the Lennon McCartney. So I got this. I think one reason I got this is because there's a song from here that ends up on a compilation of weird Beatles covers. But I don't think this costs too much, but you might have to pay for shipping from the UK because if you're in the US, because it's hard to find in the US, but it's evidently a common record in the UK. And oh my goodness! Oh yes, the great Kali Baloo. This is a psychedelic spoken word record that is just absolutely nuts, crazy, banana cuckoo pants. There is technically yes. So there's four quote unquote songs or recitations on the record. A game called Who Am I? Cosmic Remembrance. A cosmic telephone call from the angel Liesel and the Buddha. And how can I tell my guru? So this was the kind of record that could only get released in the late 1960s when record company executives were really, really high. But I am so glad that this record exists and got released. Barely anybody knows who Kali Baloo is. She's just this. Hardly anybody knows what her real name is. I don't know of any backstory on her. If you do know of any backstory on Kali Baloo, please let me know, because I have tried Googling a bunch of things. I've tried doing research on who the hell she is, and I cannot find anything. So if you can find some stuff, that'd be great. And
What? Oh, yes. Baja Brass plays Aventine Circus. This is this is a kind of a garage band from Southern California in the 1960s. But what makes them a little different is they added brass to their sound. So they added a little like Herb Alpert and the Tijuana Brass kind of Mexicali, Baja Marimba band to their sound. I've heard the best description of this record I've heard is somebody who called it garage yachi, like a hybrid between garage and mariachi. There's two really good Beatles covers on this, Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band and I Love Her. And it has a great cover of Jefferson Airplane's White Rabbit. So I'm a big fan of collecting cover versions of Jefferson Airplane songs, especially White Rabbit. White Rabbit is a great song when people cover it. But they also have sort of loungy stuff like Girl from Ipanema and Dave Brubeck's Take 5. So these guys were kind of all over the map. They were kind of like loungy and garagey at the same time. So definitely not for purists, but if you like mixing and matching a little bit, it might be for you. And let's see. Okay, this is one of the records that was in the great Incredibly Strange Music, Volume 1. Balsara and his singing sitars. Of course, I have to get it because of the Beatles cover on it. There's a sitar cover version of the Beatles' I Want to Hold Your Hand, but there's some other ones. There's several. There are two covers from The Sound of Music, Edelweiss and Do Re Mi. They also do If I Had a Hammer on a sitar. So basically, all sorts of things that you think would never make sense to be played on a sitar are played on a sitar in this particular record. So very, very unusual stuff. Okay, here is another record that has a bunch of Beatles covers. I guess that makes sense because I'm doing records that begin with the letter B. So this is the Band of the Irish Guards. So basically the guys in those beefeater costumes around Buckingham Palace, they look like that, and they're playing in a military-style band. And in this case, the album is called Marching with the Beatles. And this was released in the United States, believe it or not. And so I have a copy of it. And Marching with the Beatles. Yeah, it's basically military marching music done in the form of Beatles songs. Absolutely bizarre. This is another record I was able to track down through my research and eventually find on eBay. Banda Electrica. It's a lot of Brazilian pop meets electronic music. It has a cover version of Penny Lane on it, but look at that cover. Look at that cover. There's like a psychedelic organ with a tongue sticking out on the cover. Absolutely crazy. And now this one is another banda. So this one's I think the other one was from Brazil. This one's from Mexico. So it is an all mariachi album of Beatles covers. I guess it must have come out in 1970, right when the Beatles broke up. And it's Banda Plástica de Tepetixpa, Mexico. So adios a los Beatles, because the Beatles had just broken up. And it has basically all of the songs are Beatles covers. So I like albums that where all of the songs are Beatles covers. And
Generally, the weirder the style or the farther removed the style is from the actual Beatles style, the better I like it. This is a local private press or semi-local private press if you're in the state of Minnesota. It's Los Bandidos from Hutchinson, Minnesota. And I think it was recorded at a club in Bemidji, Minnesota. They were a bunch, they were a, I guess, Hispanic or Latin American family. And they had like how old was he? He's 12. So the little guy behind the drums, he's like 12 years old. And I think they call him El Chavo or something like that. It's absolutely amazing. And one of their gimmicks in playing the lounge circuit was, I guess one of them played the guitar with kind of like a rubber band sound. I mean, in addition to having the gimmick of having like basically a 12-year-old kid behind the drum kit, but you know, you gotta have a gimmick. So, Los Bandidos, and in fact, I think I may actually have a second copy of this. So, this is the kind of things that you're into. Maybe send me a message, and maybe we can trade something. All right, and Bang. And this is an early hard rock record. They were kind of contemporaries to early Black Sabbath, so their sound is similarly hard and loud, but they're not necessarily as easy to fit into the early heavy metal box. They weren't necessarily metal, but they rocked hard. So this is Bang, great cover, and yes. Ooh. The Bantams. Beware the Bantams. So, Los Bandidos, that had a drummer who was 11 or 12. This is a trio. It is a trio rock group. They were a self-contained rock group. And every single member of the group, they were 9, 10, and 12. So, it wasn't every single member of the group was too young to be teenagers. And if you look on YouTube, there are actually some clips of the Bantams playing on some of the music shows at the time, shows like Shindig and Hullabaloo and stuff like that. So check them out. I mean, obviously, there's some limits on what they can do since, you know, these guys are doing rock band and none of their voices have changed yet. But I do kind of like the idea of kids. So this is kind of a sub-genre I collect. I collect bands where, like, the only people playing musical instruments are kids. So I gotta have this. Beware the Bantams. Mostly just sort of like 1965 era garage rock. Yes, Barbara, the Grey Witch. Look at the boots. Look at those cool ass boots. This is mainly just a spoken word record that's about witchcraft. There were actually a bunch of those records in 1968, 1969, 1970 because there was a fascination with the occult at the time. But so this is Barbara, the Grey Witch, trying to do the sexy witch kind of thing with the sexy boots. So it's witchy. This is a good one. So for you Psych fans, for you soundtrack fans, for your exotica, space age, bachelor pad music fans, this is definitely a record to get. This was actually like a really killer find for me. I think I paid like $3 $3 or $4 for it, and it's a copy that's still in the shrink. But it's the original soundtrack of Barbarella, that amazing cult sci-fi movie with a very barely dressed Jane Fonda as Barbarella. So if you ever see it in the garage sale, pick it up. Don't be shy. Get it. Okay. Oh, here's a good exotica record. So I have it filed under B for Warren Barker. Warren Barker and his orchestra. Warren Barker basically was a white guy in the 50s who tried to popularize a lot of African percussion at the time. So I give him props for that. The guy on the front cover is the actor William Holden. So some people think of this as a William Holden record, although William Holden really didn't have much to do with the record. And of course, yep. Barnes and Barnes. These are the guys who did the Dr. Demento novelty song favorite, Fish Heads. But this is they did actual real albums, and this is an album called Yubaha, and they do a cover version that's almost like a synth punk cover version of the Beatles' Please Please Me, but they also have some just crazy weird novelty songs of their own, so Boogie Woogie Amputee and Party in My Pants. One half of Barnes and Barnes was the actor Billy Mooney, who's better known as a child actor from being on Lost in Space. He played Will Robinson, so every time the robot thrashes his arms and says, "Danger, Will Robinson!" Well, he was talking about Billy Mooney, who later grew up to be half of Barnes and Barnes and started singing about fish heads. So from space to robots to fish heads, it's normal career progression. And what have we got here? I guess there's the Baroque Brass, a nice UK, although I think this is a Canadian copy. So yeah, if you're in the US, please do not be fearful of ordering records from Canada. I mean, they share a land border with us, and their dollar is weaker than our dollar. So buy from Canadian record dealers. That's my tip. Anyway, let's see what have we got. Oh, yeah, this is a hard one to find. The Baroques. Very early psychedelic record from 1966. I think they were from the Chicago area, which is why they ended up on the R&B blues label Chess. Although Chess had Cadet as a subsidiary. I mentioned that Cadet later dabbled in sort of psychedelic soul and having some minor success with some white psychedelic groups like the Baroques was one of the reasons why. But this is a very rare record nowadays. Very weird psychedelic titles like Iowa, A Girl's Name, musical tribute to the Oscar Mayer Wiener Wagon. So, very weird dudes. This came out in 1966, which means it's relatively early for psychedelic music. So, yeah, hard to find. It was hard to find back in the day, but it's probably harder to find now. Oh, this is a good one. This is kind of a psych soul funk record. Basically an interracial couple named Barbara and Ernie. The record is called Prelude 2. Some really good covers on here. They do a cover version of the Rolling Stones' Play with Fire, and they also do a cover version of Jefferson Airplane's Somebody to Love. And, oh, yes. So here's a very, very good one. Senor 007 by Ray Barretto. So, Ray Barretto was a Latin American band leader who probably had the peak of his popularity in the mid to late 1960s. He was associated with Latin Boogaloo. So, those Boogaloo, right-wing Boogaloo boys who wear Hawaiian shirts. I hate those guys. Partially because Boogaloo is actually a very good music. So, and they have no idea what Boogaloo is. So anyway, this is interesting because it's like Latin Boogaloo, but it has like bits from spy movie themes mixed in with it. So that's why it's called Senor 007, and he's dressed up in a white tuxedo. He's got a woman nibbling his ear, and he's like got a Walther PPK. So really, really interesting cover. And let's see. Moog España. So this is, if you like Moog synthesizer records, this one is a Latin, Spanish music done on the Moog synthesizer. And okay. Here, this one I bought. It's a Battle of the Bands record. I mainly bought it because there were some. Oh, now I know. Now I know a bunch of reasons why I bought it. Okay, so it has two Beatles covers on it, Eleanor Rigby and Let It Be. But another reason why this is a legendary private press. So there's some very interesting school band records. So there's probably a bunch of crazy guys like me who chase all these school band records from the 1960s and 70s because we look for all the weird covers that are on the record. So this one is quite an interesting one in the genre because it has a cover version of Moby Dick by Led Zeppelin. So Moby Dick, if you don't know your Led Zeppelin, it's an album cut, not a single. So it wasn't one of Led Zeppelin's more popular songs, but Moby Dick, and it has this really epic drum solo on it. So here's an example of somebody from a school band trying to do the same epic drum solo. So I don't know if the hip hop community has figured out about this record, but definitely some good drum breaks on it. And last but not least, in the box, Reverend Belgium Baxter, Let Me Pass. Not a lot of people know about this record. In fact, I was the first person to put an entry on Discogs about this record. It came from the Harrisburg, Pennsylvania area, so I'm originally from the Harrisburg, Pennsylvania area, and it was recorded on a label called Baldwin Records. In fact, Baldwin Records was founded by a man whose son later married my cousin, so I know about this particular record label, but it's a private press. And what's usual about this is it might look like a gospel record because it has a black preacher on it, but it's actually a spoken word with musical accompaniment. And it has very, very unusual, the guy has a very unusual voice in terms of how he writes his own poems. And so there's stuff like, one's just called Retired, which is about, how he's retired and doesn't have to get up to a clock anymore. And there's other stuff, Voice from Viet Ground, about the Vietnam War, the World's Boxing Match, which I believe is about different wars like World War I, World War II, and he's just talking about how he doesn't like war. Yeah, so it might look like a gospel record, but it's not. It's actually kind of a very unusual, interesting spoken word record by a guy with some pretty unique perspective. So that's the end of box 2. hope you'll, I guess, I'm supposed to say now, click like and subscribe. And